right. Good to have everybody. Welcome to the members of the audience here. We're going to open the Board of State and Community Corrections meeting, and off script, because we want it legal and sanctioned, Mr. Guillermo Villaraigosa needs to be sworn in. So you haven't been sworn in on your new term, correct, Guillermo?
That's true.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, your name?
I, Guillermo Villaraigosa,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of California.
and the Constitution of California.
I take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
We should probably do tracing on Guillermo to see where he's been since he was last here, but we're a little late getting the meeting started, so your opening remarks will have to be held. And
Understood.
compliments to our legal counsel who found out we had a interloper that had not been sworn in. So good to have you back, Guillermo.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
As always is the case nowadays in these meetings, we're going to begin with a bunch of instructions. Adam, I'm going to have you take over right now, and members of the audience participating in this meeting, please listen carefully, because many of these instructions apply to you and how to interact in this setting. Adam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I will give brief instructions for this meeting. We are using a new Zoom webinar platform. We are hoping for the best with this new technology. We will do everything we can to support participation on this call. Please bear with us as we work through this new platform today. We are hopeful it will provide better support for public participation. If you are connecting by phone, please be sure to mute your microphones or phone by dialing *6 to mute and unmute your phone. When you are called upon to speak, please eliminate all background noise before unmuting your microphone. Board members, if you wish to make a comment on any of the agenda items, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or physically raise your hand so we can see you. Today's voting will be by roll call only. At the end of the agenda item that requires a vote, I will call the roll. We will give the members of the public the opportunity to comment after each agenda item. After the board's discussion of the information items, there will be an opportunity for public comment on all of the information items. We will call on you during that time. Agenda item 5 is the opportunity for any member of the public to make a comment on any agenda items or other comments in general. Members of the public, you will have 2 minutes for your comment. Participants who wish to make a comment, please email publiccomment@bscc.ca.gov with your name and the agenda item you'd like to comment on. You can also use the raise hand feature on your Zoom video. If you are calling by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will call out the phone number you dialed in with. Unmute your phone by dialing again *6. You will be called upon to speak in order your name or phone number was received, regardless of how you submitted the request. We will lower your hand once your name is shared with the host. We will also remind you at the end of each agenda item, members of the public, you can use the raise hand feature or your Zoom or dial *9 if you are calling by phone. Madam Chair, that concludes my instructions.
Well, I have two thoughts, Adam. You said it was going to be short, and I think it's complicated, but I forgive you for the length. And please, if you have questions, reach out through the appropriate channels you see or were explained to you. And remember, we're going to now go to the information phase of the meeting, and we're going to hold all comments until we go through that complete portion of the agenda. So if you want to comment on anything, please weigh in, and we'll move forward. Everybody on the board ready to roll? All right, I'm going to start with a few remarks and some good news, I think.
We do need to call the roll.
Oh, I apologize. It was so exciting to get going. Adam, I made, fun of you, and now I have made my own error. Let's move forward with that. Adam, call roll.
Chair Penner.
Present.
Mr. Diaz is absent today. Mr. Verarosa.
Present.
Mr. Groudon.
Here.
Mr. Gore.
Present.
Mr. Seal.
Here.
Mr. Ortola.
Present.
Mr. Barranco.
Present.
Mr. Mills.
I'm present.
Mr. Budnick.
Present.
Mr. Steinhardt.
Here.
And Ms. Kumpion.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'm going to restart myself again with some opening remarks. And I want to talk about, first and foremost, the BSCC COVID-19 data reporting dashboard that has been in place for the last 2 weeks. If you remember at our July meeting, we said we were going to launch that, and I can assure you it has been fast and furious as we have collected data from county jails and juvenile detention facilities. We have had significant and amazing cooperation from the counties, and we have 2 weeks of data on our website as we speak. As we discussed during our July meeting, there's a great deal of public interest on COVID-19 data impacting correctional facilities, and the data had not been previously accessible through state level public health database. So we determined a separate data collection effort should be launched. And I want to begin with some very positive information about the level of cooperation we received from sheriffs and chief probation officers across the state. As we're here today, we only have a few counties that have not reported and only 2 counties that have told us they are not going to report. And I will tell you that is Sacramento and Tehama County. Other than that, we're still in working phases with some of these counties. And I want to give a huge shout out to our research team for the heavy lifting they did launching this. We've had numerous conversations on how to do it with all of the stakeholders and our in-house team as we did that. And Katie's gonna now expand on what we've got and how we've done it. And then I'll revisit the issue with comments after Katie has completed hers. So Katie, you wanna take the microphone?
Thank you, Chair Penner. Good morning, board members. Very happy to see you all again. As Linda has indicated, putting this new data collection effort together has been an enormous effort. And I too want to thank our fantastic research staff, specifically Casey, Stacy, and Michael, first names only, really working day and night on this, quite literally. So just to give a brief summary of what information is available and some of the key decision points and frankly, limitations that we had to put in place in how the data are reported. I wanted to just encourage everybody who's interested to take a look at the data dashboard on the BSCC website. Here are the data elements that are going to be reported and updated weekly, both with respect to county jail facilities and juvenile detention facilities. And those are facility level reports that you will see there. So the data elements include, first off, the facility population, then the number of incarcerated people who have been tested for COVID-19. That was some additional data that we agreed after further review that we could and should add, the number of people who have been tested, the number of positive tests that were returned during that reporting period, the number of incarcerated people who've been hospitalized, the number of incarcerated people who have recovered, and the number of incarcerated people who have died of the COVID-19. And with respect to the correctional staff in the facilities, we are collecting data on the number of staff tested, the staff confirmed positive tests, and the staff with cases that have resolved. We will be updating the data dashboard on Fridays, so there will be a chunk of the Friday day where our team is updating those numbers, but by the end of Friday, the weekly update should be there. I want to spend a moment answering questions that I know Linda and I and others have received from a number of people about that protocol for reporting small numbers of cases. So cases between the numbers 1 and 10, whether that is related to the population or the number of tests or the number of positives. That was based on the guidance and requirements that we received from the California Health and Human Services Agency around data de-identification guidelines. We just posted some, or we're maybe in the process of posting some additional information about those guidelines, which are intended to assist in assuring that data is de-identified for purposes of public release in a way that meets the requirements of California Information Practices Act and the HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And that's to prevent the possible disclosure of personally identifiable information. And I know specifically with respect to the juvenile detention facilities, we're very, in the vast number of cases, if there is any reporting, it is in that less than 11 range. And we, based on the advice we received from Department of Public Health and with certainly the concerns that we understand about personally identifying information, that information is still valuable. It still provides information about what is happening in the detention facilities. So Linda, those were the points that I wanted to cover about the data dashboard. Back to you.
Great, thanks. One of the issues we've heard about from a number of sources that we thought long and hard about was collecting cumulative data. And we've considered many things as we heard those requests and actually even considered it ourselves. And we knew it was such a big lift for all the counties that are dealing with many other challenges related to COVID-19. We didn't want to add data that may not be particularly meaningful. We had to put definitions out just 2 weeks ago, so we were relatively certain that using previous data would not give us what we consider accurate and concise as we move forward. So we thought long and hard about the accuracy we would get if we tried to retroactively look at COVID data county over county. The focus on the dashboard, and this is a major consideration to us, is to be well aware of the health status and the outcomes of individuals in county facilities across the state. We understood that in terms of overall reporting, such as at the county or the state level, it's important to have cumulative information, but this is a different kind of data collection. For example, I'll throw this out to you. If there were 100 positive cases in a local detention facility 4 months ago, and now there are only 2 active cases in a facility, knowing that there were 102 4 months ago, didn't tell us what we think our ultimate goal is. Not to say there's not value in cumulative data. We certainly understand in the state of California, you're getting cumulative data week over week, and we want to say that we would understand why on a statewide basis that is meaningful, but we are measuring and considering populations that are extremely transient in jails and juvenile hall, and we thought cumulative data may provide a really distorted picture of what's actually going on. So in summary, the information the dashboard provides is what's happening on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis with COVID-19 in the facilities. And we think that that data reaches our ultimate goal. So I'll end with that. And then I want to reach out to the board for questions, comments, and consideration of the remarks that both Katie and I have shared right now.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a question for Katie.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure I understand the health department saying that we should just report if it's less than 10, clump them all together. If I reported, like say 3 or 5, how would that potentially infringe on their privacy rights?
It's a general guideline, Sheriff Gore, for data reporting on health matters that has to do, I spent some time reading these guidelines this week with kind of the numerator to denominator issue. And we wanted to put out consistent guidance based on what the Department of Public Health told us. It's possibly not as much of an issue in a county like San Diego where the denominator is going to be larger, but in a very small county, or certainly considering a juvenile detention facility, when the denominator is low, it begins to create more of a risk about the potential re-identification of a specific person. So that's the guidance as we understand it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
David.
I'm on, make sure I'm not muted. So, I mean, we've come a long way by having this data, and that's a great step forward. There are two pieces that make the data hard to understand and a little opaque in my mind. One is when counties don't report. So I looked this morning at all of the juvenile COVID data, and I saw LA didn't report last week. And I was a little surprised to hear that Sacramento had chosen not to report. And so I wonder what we're doing to encourage counties to actually produce the information or to learn why they cannot. That's number one, and maybe Lucille wants to address that since Sacramento was mentioned. The other thing is that if you don't test, you don't get any positives. I mean, there's zeros all across the board in the juvenile data, but they all seem to derive from the fact that no tests were done. For example, Fresno had 122 kids in detention, but administered no tests. So therefore, there were no positives. So therefore, they get a 0 in terms of infection. So it's very important for people looking at the data to understand that it's test sensitive. And if somebody chooses not to test, then they're not going to show any positives. And that's just a built-in data limitation. But it's important to understand as you read the data. So I guess I'll just go back to my question about counties that don't report and what's being done to encourage them.
Just one little comment. We found that you can't force people to take the test. It's strictly a voluntary test. We are strongly encouraging as just part of the intake process, but we find a lot of people that don't want to be tested. But that's just part of your question, I understand.
And I see Lee, are you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to this. As to Sacramento County, our probation department is reporting. I believe I'm looking at the dashboard now and it reflects that. So I hope I'm not mistaken in that assertion. We also have publicly reported, independent of the BSCC dashboard, information regarding our juvenile facility. And we've been transparent about that, issuing a press release along the way. So we're committed to this project and hopefully I'm not mistaken in that. I have been informed that we are not seeing participation from our county sheriff's department as to adult facilities. And I have not had a conversation with Sheriff Jones as to why that is.
My apologies, Lee. I think my statement was misleading. I should have said the adult facility.
It was. I was about to go on the attack against Chief Sear. Now I'm going to pull back.
Well, I just wanted to see if he could, take care of business here, if he was listening carefully. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I certainly don't want to have to defend myself from Scott, so I appreciate the clarification.
Didn't LA link to their website, which has extensive information on it? LA, sure.
And LA is reporting, and if they've missed this last window period, my memory tells me I saw an email from LA saying they were having trouble hitting our deadline versus their collection efforts. So they are full on board in LA, and we're just trying to mesh timelines. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to now move on to information item B, and that's the CSEF update from CDCR. The next information item is an update about the coronavirus supplemental funding we approved at our emergency meeting last month. And I believe there was a great deal of interest in an update. And so we have Jessica Fernandez from the Division of Rehabilitation Programs at CDCR today with us to give us an informational update on the $15 million of emergency housing for people coming out of state prison and how it's being used. And Jessica, I see you there. And are you ready? Try to do better than the board chair, Jessica. Like, don't forget to take roll and such. We welcome you to the BSCC. It's great to have you, and we're ready for your update.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Jessica Fernandez. I'm with the Division of Rehabilitative Programs, and I'm going to give a slight overview of how we're going to leverage this funding to provide emergency housing services to those that are being released after July 1. So on the screen, you can see a quick slideshow that I'll be presenting on emergency housing services. So on this overview page, you can see that I will be providing an update on how we're leveraging our current network via our STOP contract to provide services to the releasing population. I will also go over the distribution of the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding. I will review the utilization of the current network and how it's comprised of the community-based organizations to address emergent needs of the releasing population. And I will also present on the oversight that DRP will be providing to the community-based organizations and our contractors and providing this service. So here you can see a map of California. It has all 58 counties, and it also provides a brief overview of how our counties are broken up by region. So we have 6 different regions throughout the that make up the STOP contract. So we have 6 different contracts throughout the state to provide oversight to our community-based organizations that actually provide the emergency housing services to our releasing population. And you can see that there's different counties that make up each program area. So it differs from region to region. And each region has its different needs. So each contractor is required to address the different needs appropriately. Moving on to the next slide. Here is a graph of, or not a graph, I'm sorry, it's a spreadsheet of how the releases were distributed. So in the top line, you can see the projected releases. Those are the numbers that were released to each of the program areas. So just I'll give a quick overview for STOP Area 1, our contractor is WestCare. We have a projected number of 950 set to release to that area. And that is about 13% of our total releases. They're going to Program Area 1. Program Area 2 is GEO. That's 790 individuals that are projected to release to that program area, and that's about 11%. Program Area 3 is 1,173, which makes up about 16% of our releasing population. Program Area 4 is GEO. They are getting about 1,156 of our releasing population. That's about 16%. Amity, Program Area 5, which makes up Los Angeles County, is getting 31%, and that equals about 2,216 individuals. And Program Area 6 is San Diego area, San Diego, Orange County, and Imperial. That makes up about 13% of our releases, and that is 978. So obviously the numbers kind of vary, but this is just a breakdown of what the projections that we use when we distributed the funding. So that percentage indicates that 13% of that funding went to program area 1, 11% went to program area 2, 16% went to program area 3, and so on. So of the 13% that went to program area 1, 12% will go directly to the community-based organizations that are actually providing the service. 1% will be allocated for admin cost, and that admin cost will cover any placement coordination, any positions that need placement coordination, transportation needs, because within our STOP contract, we require our contractors to provide transportation to our releasing population to the program that has been identified upon release. So we also allow them to provide, to use that for quality assurance. So as we're bringing up capacity, we have quality assurance positions that are required to go out and verify that the programs that are being brought up are meeting the standard needs of our contract. So as you can see on the right-hand side on the totals, 91% is going to be allocated directly to our community-based organizations that are providing the services, and 9% will go to the admin cost. So on the bottom, you can see the breakdown of the funding that is allocated to each of the different program areas. So at any given time, the way we're projecting that we've established a statewide rate for emergency housing services, which is about $70 a day per each individual. So given that, we're projecting that we can serve 534 individuals every day at any given time, just in our emergency housing programs. And that is if somebody stays, if everybody that is referred stays on an average of 30 days, we could serve a little over 6,000 individuals throughout the whole entire fiscal year. That number is going to vary dependent on how long an individual stays, and obviously the different rate. The $70 is an average rate, but the rate may vary by the different areas. So Bay Area, we might get a more expensive rate for emergency housing services. Moving on to the next slide. So the community-based organizations, they're the individuals that provide services directly to the releasing population. So we will be monitoring them accordingly. There are about 500 community-based organizations within our STOP network. Now those community-based organizations are required to provide different types of services within our STOP contract. They provide anywhere between non-medical detox, licensed residential treatment, emergency housing services, or outpatient. But the focus that we're going to be delegating this funding is to the 269 community-based organizations that are going to be leveraged to provide emergency housing services to the releasing population. On this graph, I've outlined the number of counties by each program area so that you can see the different number of counties that comprise each program area. As you can see, program area 1, it has the most counties. So they have 23 counties that are within their area of their program area. And each county is very different. So we're looking at the different needs of each of the county. We're working with probation to identify the needs of the releasing population. You can see that within the program area 1, we have about 43 different community-based organizations that will be providing emergency housing services to our releasing population. Program area 2, we have about 26 community-based organizations that we'll be using to provide services, and each program, their capacity differs. So we might have some that provide just they have a capacity of about six beds per contract or per subcontract. Some of them have about 20 slots, so it varies. So within those community-based organizations, I did a quick tally. So for our program area 1 with the 43 CBOs, we have approximately 230 slots to provide emergency housing emergency housing services. Program Area 2 with the 26 housing providers, that makes up about 326 slots. For Program Area 3, we have 33 CBOs that are currently a part of our network, and that makes up 260 slots. Program Area 4 has 65 community-based organizations that they subcontract with, and that's 569 slots. And within our network right now for Los Angeles County in Program Area 5, we have 25 recovery and reentry housing providers, and that equals about 1,195 slots. As you can see, the numbers vary by area and by the different types of subcontracts that are in place. And our last program area has about 25 housing providers, and they have about 373 slots right now that we can use for emergency housing services. So total, what our current capacity is for housing, only housing, is about 2,900 slots statewide. So the next slide is just a breakdown, just to give everybody a view of how we pull or how we track our recovery and reentry housing through our database. So we pull our different directories. We can see where each of our programs are located, what county, what the name of the program is, the address, and so forth. So these are the resources that we will be using. We provided a link on our on the agenda where you can see the different housing providers that comprise our STOP network, and that is located on our website under the Community Reentry Services. Moving on to the next slide, I'm just going to give a quick overview on how STOP works. So we have 6 different contracts throughout the state that are awarded via the competitive bid process. We contract directly with our STOP contractors, and they turn around and they actually establish, they maintain, and they provide oversight to all of the community-based organizations within our network. And those community-based organizations are the organizations that actually provide services to the direct population that are being released. So with that being said, we, our STOP contractors are required to, like I said earlier, provide the transportation, the assessment needs, the placement process, and monitor each of the community-based organizations for quality assurance and ensure that they're meeting the standards that we've identified in our contract. Now, each of the community-based organizations provide a different type of service, but all together within each region, our community-based organizations are required to provide some type of non-medical detox, licensed residential treatment, recovery and reentry housing, and outpatient services. As you can see, I've highlighted, I've bolded, and I've underlined number 3, because that's the resource, that's the modality that we're actually using right now to provide the emergency housing services to our releasing population to answer the emergent need that we have right now. You move on to the next slide. Let's see. Just to go over how we're utilizing our current network of recovery and reentry housing to provide the emergency services to any individual that is releasing after July 1 of 2020 and has an identified need for housing. They are eligible for emergency housing services through the CESF funding that we will be monitoring. So we will be working with our partners within probation to identify the different needs of the releasing population to bring up capacity where it's needed. And we will be working with our different contractors to identify what the other needs are, whether it be public health, to identify what other services we need to bring into our network to provide these emergency housing services to the releasing population. Next slide is our implementation. So since we've been working on bringing up this capacity and leveraging our current network, we've identified our strategic plan on how we distributed the fundings accordingly. We've implemented a statewide referral and placement procedure. We're working directly with probation and our STOP contractors, so our probation partners can leverage these services directly. We're setting up regional calls with our partners to increase capacity in the identified areas where it's needed. And we're also developing internal procedures to track the daily number of referrals, of placements, and the utilization trends for emergency housing services. So I get a daily report from our, that we pull from our database that tracks all the referrals that are being placed in emergency housing services, all the transportation that has been coordinated through our STOP contractors, all the placements and where they're located, and we'll be able to see the length of stay moving forward. So just to give everybody quite a number, since the 1st of August, we've placed about 100 individuals in emergency housing services throughout the state. As we're working closely with probation, we expect those numbers to increase as individuals have been released and they're moving to quarantine beds, and then they're moving out. We'll see these numbers increase because after they quarantine, they'll be leveraging emergency housing services after. So moving on to the next slide is our oversight. This is how DRP is going to continue to provide oversight to how the funds are being used. So we'll be extracting data from our automated reentry management system, what we call ARMS, to again track referrals, the placements, the length of stay. We'll also be able to track the exits, why people are exiting, if they've been referred to a different level of care, if there was any higher need of service, where if they were referred to a different modality within the system, we'll be able to track that. We will also be monitoring the rates of the community-based organization as we bring on additional capacity to ensure that the rates are comparable to what's already set forth within our network. And we will also be monitoring the monthly reimbursement to each of the community-based organization via our invoice process. So we'll be able to track how much funding is being distributed to each of the community-based organizations and compare it to the referrals and to the placements, and we'll be able to monitor any wait lists if we have any throughout the state. So that concludes our update.
Thank you, Jessica. Really comprehensive. I'm guessing we're going to get some comments from board members, and I see Scott Budnick, who probably did not raise his hand when he was in school, doing it today.
Never. Jessica, amazing presentation, so comprehensive. I learned a lot. Thank you, thank you. My only question was around some of the overhead. It seemed a little, people that were serving like 2,000 people were doing 1% to their overhead, but people that were serving less than that were doing 2% or 3%. It just didn't seem to be adding up. Did they just have to choose and make a case as to why they need to take 3% for their operation, or 2% or 1%? Or was it based on the amount of people that they're serving?
No, we took all of that into consideration. So also what is really hard to portray are the different needs by each of the different program areas. So in program area 3, where we have what's the Central Valley, we have a lot of our institutions. So we have a lot of transportation needs in that program area. So a lot of their overhead costs or their admin costs is going to be focused more on that specific need, which might be transportation. Within program area 5, where there was 3% of the admin cost, and they're getting about 2,200 of our releases, they're going to have the need for placement coordination. They might have the need for quality assurance to bring up additional capacity to meet these needs. So each area is a little different, and they're going to allocate that cost accordingly. What we will be monitoring is how that cost is going to be leveraged. We monitor how that is going to be, how it's going to be, reimbursed through us, the different receipts and everything. That's going to be closely monitored by our unit as well.
Well, listen, I know you've had to turn this around quickly. It's unbelievable, kind of the level of work and care that went into this so quickly. So I just want to thank you and DRP.
Thank you.
Mike Curtola.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jessica, for being here. Excellent report.
Thank you.
A little question regarding Area 1.
Mhm.
I think it was about the 4th or 5th spreadsheet that showed, I know Sacramento, San Joaquin, some larger counties are in Area 1.
Mhm.
So my question really has to do with the potential lack of providers, service providers in the northern states, especially the smaller states, northern counties, especially the smaller ones. So if you could just speak to that and the progress that maybe is being, hopefully will be in the northern states, counties.
Right. The northern counties. So Sacramento's in program area 1 and San Joaquin is actually in program area 3. So in program area 1, we have about 20, I want to say it was 23 counties that make up that program area. And we do have some in the rural areas up in the northern region of the state. And so what we're doing is we're working with probation to see if they have any resources, any sober living environments, any transitional housing that they've used that we can leverage and bring into our network so that we can do that reimbursement and so that we can leverage them for emergency housing services. Our go-to is to use our any sober living or transitional housing that we can bring into our network, because through that we have program managers on site that are going to be able to provide oversight and supervision in case any of our releasing population is in need of any assistance. The cost will cover food, it'll cover the basic needs that any individual has. And additional capacity in those areas, what we're looking at is using maybe hotels to cover the stay. That's going to be our backup plan. We're hoping to be able to bring up housing providers in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I follow up regarding Area 1? I did a presentation, and this is good information. I appreciate also the administration making this investment as well. I did receive some information last night, though, suggesting from my own team, suggesting that we're now in a waitlist status in program area 1. Can you tell me a little bit about whether that's in fact true and what you know about capacity versus demand?
Yeah, so right now I know that one of our program area 1, we do have a need for emergency housing or for recovery and reentry housing that we'll be leveraging for emergency housing services. So that's why we're working with our different partners to try to bring up capacity. So we have regional calls that we're coordinating throughout the state with all of our probation partners, and we have that every 2 weeks. So one of the things that we've been doing is having probation identify any sober living or transitional houses that they've used that we can bring into their network. We're also just having our contractors just identify what other capacity we could bring in. So when we bring in new capacity, we have to get them provisionally cleared. Anybody that is directly providing services to our population, they have to go through a background check. So right there, we're working with our different organizations to try to speed up that process so that we can bring up additional capacity as it's needed. And
Great.
So if we need to, we will expand. We will leverage our other modalities to answer that need.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And I'd like to represent that probably the single biggest challenge when I talk to my team. What I hear always is housing, housing, and housing. And I'm working with county officials right now to see if there's money that we can free up in our budget to put into the hands of housing providers out there. I believe we heard last time as part of this meeting that there are people out there who stand ready to help in this area and want to do this work. And obviously in this economy, if we've got people who from the community who can do this work, we want to get those dollars out there and work together to do that. So to that end, if we know that or we're aware of providers, is there a process that we can provide that to you, or do you feel like you're getting all the information you need in that area?
me, you could send it to me, and I'll work with my team and with the stop contractors to bring up that capacity. We've coordinated regional calls with probation, and I believe the last one that we were on, I don't believe that we were able to speak to Sacramento. So if you can encourage them to participate so they could communicate those needs, or even just email me directly.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Norma.
Hi there. Thank you, Jessica. That was a wonderful report. I have a question about occasionally, sometimes people parole without, or they go out to court and they're released through court without parole or probation. And I'm wondering if there's any provisions for any kind of override, or if there's maybe a couple of dedicated beds in that for people like that. It's been affecting a lot of the women coming home for some of the bills that have passed recently. So I'm wondering if you know of where we could refer people who aren't on probation or parole that are coming home.
I'm not familiar with how the releases or how those from the court go, how that process is handled. But what they can do is they can contact the program area lead that oversee the contract, and we can place. We do have female dedicated services within our different regions that would be able to place females.
Thank you so much.
Would they be able to place females not on parole?
Are they on probation? Or
No, just to piggyback on Norma, under the felony murder legislation, a lot of people who thought they were doing 20 more years in prison and who were not the main perpetrators in their crime are going back to court. And sometimes judges say,
for the
right, just release them from there with no conditions because they've done 20 years on a burglary or robbery or something.
Right.
And so what is, other than using their Medi-Cal to go outside of the STOP network and try to find housing with their Medi-Cal, if they have Medi-Cal, are there any ways to deal with that within the STOP network if someone is not on probation or parole?
Yeah, we could definitely coordinate such services. There's so many different resources that we're able to leverage through our network. So if we can't use it, if they're in need of different services, even in addition to emergency housing, we really work with them and try to figure it out.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Looking for any other comments? Seeing Guillermo, was that a hand raise or just a?
No, but thank you for noticing.
I'm observant, unless you ask me to call roll. All right, well, we're going to move on. And yes, Katie, I was not recognizing you at that point, please. No,
Sorry, I was a tad late in my hand raise, and I do want to apologize to everyone. I just wanted to note that connected to all of these important services around reentry, we do have an agenda item coming up later today where the board will be considering a recommendation to allocate out about $17 million in adult reentry grants. And the eligibility for services under that is a bit more extensive, and I think consistent with the questions that Norma and Scott were asking. Those rental assistance programs can assist people like Scott and Norma were asking about. So that's on your agenda later today in this, I just want to underscore we're doing everything we can to move quickly to put resources out in the field to support reentry services.
All right, good point, Katie. All right, back to Katie right now. We're going to go on to the next agenda item under information. And Katie, could you give us a little briefing on the BSCC inspection and training compliance?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Starting with our update on inspections, as you are probably aware, the 2018-2020 biennial inspection cycle just completed on June 30th of this year. And given the very dynamic challenges associated with the pandemic, we have adapted our inspection cycles and procedures. We are in very extensive and regular contact with the counties every single day. And in the recent weeks, on a case-by-case basis, we've also begun scheduling and conducting in-person inspections in the field. We are approving those inspection trips on a case-by-case basis so that we can assure that our staff are able to travel safely, that they have access to the necessary PPE, that they're making their own COVID-19 related health considerations to make sure they're not a possible transmitter. And also we're considering the applicable travel restrictions due to COVID and more. When we meet in September, we will provide a report to the board consistent with the plans that we discussed with the board back in February of this year on our enhanced inspection process. And specifically, we will provide a summary of the 2018 to 20 cycle and inform the board about serious issues of non-compliance that have been identified. Those counties and facilities will be prioritized for in-person visits, consistent with the travel guidelines that I've outlined above. In addition, in the next few months, we will be requesting specific information from each county about their policies and procedures to manage and mitigate COVID-19 in their facilities, and we will keep the board posted on that. And finally, we will continue our work on the regulation revisions process, and we will be scheduling meetings on Zoom. So please take a look at our website for updates on that, and we will keep the board posted as to progress. On our grants related work, our CPGP division has continued to handle COVID-19 modification requests. And you may recall that in April of this year, the board granted our staff temporary authority to approve grant project scope changes and modifications to their programs, also no cost extensions in consultation with the board chair. So the CPGP division has and continues to assist our grantees, both through state funding and federal funding, to overcome program challenges due to COVID-19. We have approved requests to temporarily pause services, to purchase laptops or tablets, and to support the use of virtual platforms like Zoom to interact with their clients. Our grantees have been very resilient and creative in the delivery of services, and our staff has continued to support those efforts. Again, I just want to give across the board shout out to the BSCC staff for all the work that they're doing and all the modifications that they're making to deliver these important services. And then on our training, our STC division, there will be an agenda item today concerning the prohibition of the carotid hold. And then more generally, our STC team is continuing to conduct their compliance reviews by remotely linking in with our counties to review and conduct the compliance reviews of their training. So that concludes my updates, Madam Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions on any of the items Katie's presented on? Norma.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for that. I was wondering how it's being decided about where you're doing the inspections, like which counties, which facilities, like what is that process of how you figure out which ones you're going into during this time?
Yes, the inspections that have begun have been based on a variety of considerations. I mean, it's not a super simple answer, Norma. So we're at a point in our inspection work that we're a little bit in between the wrap up of the last cycle and the beginning of the new cycle. So where our inspectors have been able to make plans to travel safely, we still have a lot of limitations on air travel, for example. So where people can make day trips, some of those have already begun. Where there are fewer considerations COVID-19 risk related, such as an inspection of a facility that is where the construction has been completed. Those are certainly easier to approve. And then really the next step is going to be as the FSO team completes their review and summary of the 18-19 inspection cycle, and we identify the priority for the serious out of compliance issues, then we'll have a better ability to plan and prioritize which in-person visits should be taking place.
Anybody? Nothing? All right, we're going to move on. Katie, while we have your undivided attention, would you like to do the legislative report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Adam has included a legislative update table in the board materials. Thank you for that, Adam. And I did want to give a short update on the status of the DJJ realignment proposal. We talked about this during the board meeting. And I would just note again, as has certainly been noted a lot this year, everything about the legislature's budget process was different during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So the usual budget subcommittees were extremely truncated. There were only a few hearings that took place between March and June. Legislators generally participated in person. Others who were there to present were on Zoom. And then when the budget passed in June, which was just after our board meeting, the legislation, which is known as a trailer bill, to implement the statutory changes on DJJ realignment were not included. So that remained kind of an open item. And when the legislature came back from their summer break, the next thing that happened is that the legislative leadership sent an alternative proposal to the governor. And in very brief summary, that proposal calls for a planning process for this transition through the Child Welfare Council, the creation of an Office of Youth Justice under the Health and Human Services Agency, and the transfer of the juvenile justice related duties that are now housed at the BSCC to be transferred to this new office at HHS, and quite a bit more. I'm just giving you a very high level overview. Last Thursday, August 6th, there was an informational hearing in the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 5 on public safety. That was an informational hearing. There was not a vote on any legislative proposal at that point. And the next step for the legislature will be a full Senate budget committee this Saturday, the 15th of August, where the full committee will discuss DJJ realignment. Again, this is an informational hearing, and so no vote is scheduled. So quite frankly, we're not quite sure how the negotiations will proceed from here. I would point out that the Department of Finance stated in the informational hearing last week that there is common ground between the administration's May revised proposal and the legislature's alternative proposal, and that the administration is open to discussing the role of the BSCC and a youth advocate office. If there is to be an agreement, I would just note that it needs to come together before the end of August. And that's my update.
Anybody would like to have questions or add anything to Katie's presentation? All right, seeing none. We're now at the portion of the agenda where I think we're going to invite public comment on any of the items presented. I'm not sure who's in charge of that today, Adam.
That's going to be Adam.
That's going to be me. But Linda, Chair Penner, I think Aaron has a legal update.
Okay, we can do that first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, I would like to just remind board members we do have an agenda item today involving awards of grants. If you could make sure that you take a look at the proposed grantees, and then if you have any financial conflicts or believe that you need to recuse yourself from that agenda item, that you do so at this time, but please look ahead at that agenda item. And then briefly, a quick legal update. Oh, Sheriff Gore?
Yeah, I'll recuse myself. I'm on the board of one of the recipients.
Okay, well, we will then do that recusal at that time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then another brief legal update, Madam Chair. In July, this is an update on our burn jag litigation, which has been ongoing since 2017. This relates to all of our federal grants in some way, and the federal government's intention to impose certain immigration conditions on the receipt of federal funds. The Ninth Circuit came out with an opinion last month in the city and county of San Francisco versus the United States Attorney General, and the state of California also participated in that legal action, where the Ninth Circuit did affirm a lower district court's holding that the United States government could not impose additional conditions to our burn JAG funding specifically. And then that also falls into some of our other grants as well, including the Title II and the RSAT program. So for now, that litigation had to do with the 2017 funding. There's also ongoing litigation with our 2018 and 2019 grant funding as well. But for now, we'll certainly maintain the JAG funding as it is right now. There is currently a circuit split between the Ninth Circuit and the Second Circuit on this issue, however, so this may have to be resolved at some future date by the United States Supreme Court, and we'll continue to keep you updated as that litigation progresses.
Thank you. Okay, Adam?
Madam Chair, we have 5 members of the public who wants to comment, but just a reminder to the members of the public, you could use the raised hand feature on your Zoom, and if you are by phone, you could dial *9, and you will have 2 minutes for each of your comments. Madam Chair, the first one
Excuse me for just a minute, Adam. We will be, after the first 2 speakers, closing the queue. So I want to make that very clear, regardless of how you weigh in. So.
Did you say the first 2?
Yes.
Okay. So the first one, we have Avalon Edwards.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Avalon Edwards, and I'm a policy fellow with Starting Over Inc., which provides reentry services to people leaving jails and prisons in the Inland Empire. We are incredibly concerned about the decreased number of facility inspections due to COVID-19 precautions. Desk audits are not a suitable replacement for in-person inspections, as they fail to hold facilities accountable for what actually happens in practice. At Starting Over, we are in frequent contact with people inside Riverside County jails and their family members. We have heard consistently about the horrifying conditions inside several Riverside County facilities. They have cited a lack of masks, soap, and a complete disregard for social distancing from the guards inside. These facilities may not be easy for the inspection team to visit on a day trip, but I urge the BSCC to prioritize the immediate emergency inspection of facilities in counties like Riverside, where the lives of incarcerated people are being endangered every day by county negligence. This information is not accessible to the BSCC through a desk audit. We request the emergency inspections of Riverside County jails to ensure the safety of our community members in local facilities. Additionally, we ask the BSCC to revise COVID-19 guidelines for local adult and juvenile facilities. Given the rapid changes to COVID-19 precautions and recommendations by public health agencies, we are concerned that the BSCC has not updated its guidance since the original issuing of memos at the start of the COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders. BSCC updates could include best practices such as limiting admissions, instituting a 14-day quarantine upon admission and transfers between facilities, and increasing COVID-19 test access for people in the facilities. And finally, I'd like to request that the BSCC follow its original plan for the COVID-19 data dashboard to include cumulative totals over time and statewide totals for COVID tests and positive results. The public and community advocates rely solely on the BSCC as a centralized database for accurate and useful information on conditions and concerns inside local facilities. We ask the BSCC to remedy these issues as it continues to collect this critical and life-saving information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, next we have Renee Menard.
Are you there, Renee?
Hello, yes. Renee Menard with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice in San Francisco. CJCJ is both a policy organization as well as a direct service organization serving individuals involved in the justice system in San Francisco County. I am speaking with you all today to first thank you for sharing with the public the information that you've provided regarding your steps to protect people and to provide information on COVID-19 in local facilities. I also am very concerned about the decreased facility inspections and in fact the full halt on in-person inspections. While we understand that there are different hoops to jump through today than in the past, the halt on in-person inspections is really leaving us in the dark. Currently, media coverage has been very clear. Facilities are maintaining unsafe conditions and lives are at risk when there are issues within facilities, not only around hygiene, but around use of isolation and a real lack of information being provided to families. So this is an area where we urge the BSCC to take stronger action, recognizing that desk audits and policies on paper do not reflect the realities for people on the inside. And secondly, I also would like to recommend that the BSCC revisit the guidance it provided to county facilities, both adult and juvenile facilities, earlier this year. After 4 months, much has changed, as we all know, and that includes the precautions and recommendations for protecting people inside local facilities. So in addition to bringing the inspections back into place, we also request that the BSCC revisit and re-administer guidelines for county facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. As I noted, we'll be closing the queue now. Adam?
Well, we have some more, but that was it.
No, Adam, we're just not forming any further lines. We want, who is ever in line now may speak.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So next we have Miguel Garcia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Hello.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, my name is Miguel Garcia. I'm the policy coordinator with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. First off, I want to thank the DRP for providing that explanation, as some of the communities that had and still does have some concerns of way funds were allocated. I just want to reiterate that the remaining funds, coronavirus relief funds, should be prioritized to community-based organizations. But one population that is needed to have attention is the young adults and young people that are being impacted by COVID-19. School is back in session. A lot of community-based organizations provide these alternatives and relief to some of the families that are struggling all over California. Reentry support for the young population is going to be needed. Housing is important, as well as partnership with communities and organizations that represent and look and come from where the places they experience. I also just want to reiterate that the BSCC should revise their guidelines. Again, it has been 6 months, and furthermore, that we've learned more about COVID-19 and the importance of how to, one, what the administering test, as well as the discharge of and the handling how young people and adults are released. I think it's important for individuals who do get administered tests during intake process have peace in mind with knowing the results, whether they are still in the custody of the agency or once they are released. Results are needed in order for them to know that they're not spreading the virus. Thank you, and you all have a good day and be safe.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karen McDaniel.
Yes, thank you. I am Karen McDaniel. I'm the founder and executive director of the Place for Grace. We provide family reunification programs, 23 in fact, in 16 CDCR prisons. First of all, I'd like to thank Jessica Fernandez for her incredibly informative presentation this morning from DRP. I have some specific questions and some information that I would like to share. Specifically, I am presenting myself today in my role as the statewide point of contact for CBOs interacting with CDCR related to early releases. I have been helping coordinate those ride homes since the first round of early releases in April and continue to do so now as we approach the end of the current 8,000 releases. One very specific question that I have is how information is being disseminated to local probation, parole, and actually the individual institutional staff about beds that are available. Because I can share that as of yesterday, I am still receiving calls from institutional staff, that includes CC3s and case records people. I am still receiving calls from probation officers and parole. In many instances, they do not know that there are beds available. They do not know who to contact. I am regularly giving them Jessica's information and contact information to reach out to her. As a result of them not having this information, I can tell you that on Sunday from Wasco State Prison, there were numerous individuals released that were listed as transient. No matter what I did, no matter whom I asked, no matter what offers I made, those people were in fact released and were in fact put on the Greyhound bus in Kern County. So I gave specific direction that Jessica was to be contacted, that there was beds available, and that is just one instance of ongoing issues of actual people on the line, probation officers that do not have the information available to them, institutional staff that does not have the information available to them, and this is an ongoing problem. In addition, and then I'll finish up, there has got to be some rhyme or reason to testing. I understand that every person, in fact, is supposed to be tested 7 days prior to release. That is not, in fact, what is happening. There is huge variation across the state from institution to institution, and I really would request that there's some tightening up done on that. But specifically to my question, how is this information being disseminated to probation, to parole, and to individual institutions?
Thank you. Scott, I thought you had a hand up.
I did. Are we allowed to pause the public comment for a moment and get some answers here, or do we get it at the end?
It'd be my preference that we went to the end, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Next, we have Anako Major.
Maybe you're on mute? Adam, you want to call the name one more time?
It's Anako or Anako Major.
All right. We'll move to the next.
And Brian Goldstein.
Are you there, Brian?
I am, yes. Good morning. Brian Goldstein with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. Before I begin my brief public comment, I would ask the board chair if, in addition to my comment, I could also read the public comment of a colleague of mine who's unfortunately unable to attend the meeting today.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's on our time limit, you know that, Brian.
Of course.
Thank you.
Brian Goldstein with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. We appreciate that BSCC has heeded our longstanding request to collect COVID-19 testing data. We thank BSCC staff for their work. Unfortunately, the agency has not moved forward with the one-time request for cumulative data. We are disappointed by the agency's step back. This is critical information for California. BSCC acknowledged this was important data, and that's why you asked for it in your July 15th letter to the counties. We asked that the agency reconsider and go back to the counties and ask for this information. Otherwise, this leaves California with at least a 5-month gap in understanding the scope of this deadly pandemic. And next, I'd like to read a public comment from my colleague, Dominique Nung, Director of Youth Justice Policy at the Children's Defense Fund of California. A key BSCC responsibility is providing leadership and technical assistance to counties. CDF requests that the BSCC release new or updated guidelines to support local adult and juvenile facilities in adequately protecting their staff and the individuals housed inside. We are concerned that no additional guidance has been provided since the BSCC's original memos 4.5 months ago, despite the rapid changes to COVID-19 precautions and recommendations by public health agencies. Given BSCC provides TA to the counties on a daily basis, new guidance can be more specific and practical. Publishing guidance will give more insight to the public about what facilities are or could be doing, and gives important context to families who have loved ones inside. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you by proxy, Dominique and Adam.
That is it.
Okay, I now turn back to the board and recognize Scott. Did we lose Scott?
Scott had his camera off. There you go.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Karen McDaniel, thank you for your comments. Really, really appreciate the work you do. Definitely concerned that CC3s aren't prepared with the information or are fine just releasing someone transient. So just wanted to ask, I know Jessica, Kevin, I don't know if those staff fall under you guys, but what can we do to disseminate this information so those issues don't continue to repeat? And also maybe Guillermo, if you had any thoughts on that as well in terms of educating the parole agents about all these beds as well, if that's necessary.
Guillermo? I'm sorry, Kevin.
Go ahead, Guillermo.
I can share a bit of what the CDCR's attempts have been in terms of disseminating information. And then, as you've already noted, Kevin Hoffman is present. He can probably give us some more details. But what I can say is that the department has stood up through the Emergency Command Center a couple of different ways to communicate this information. It should not shock anyone that it's likely insufficient. We acknowledge that, and we, on a weekly basis, review what other efforts we can take. Probation departments have specific contact numbers to be able to access the housing piece, a specific contact number to be able to access parole staff if we need to review a PRCS or whether someone's parole, if there's been a mistake. So that's the bulk of the communication really occurs with the probation departments, and they have a direct link to be able to get that information. And additionally, their association, CPOC, communicates on a daily call with CDCR. I feel fairly confident that that communication is taking place. There are, with regard to parole agents knowing that there's this availability, that's something that after this meeting I can go back and take a look at and see if there's a gap here. I'll do that later today. And then I'll let Hoffman address maybe some of the communication with the actual providers.
Thank you, Guillermo. Like Guillermo said, we are having weekly calls with probation chiefs, CPOC, and as Jessica spoke to, we are having regional calls with probation offices, with our stop providers, and with our DAPO partners. As with anything this large, there probably will be some times when the information is not making it completely out to the field, but we're making every effort we can to have these conversations on a daily basis. We are on phone calls with our case records partners, with DAI and public health, and those are statewide calls. So the information is getting out there. It's just, we probably will have these one-offs where some people are not getting the complete picture, but we are working on that daily to ensure that everybody understands what's available to them. As far as the CC3, I might have to talk to Karen separately. I'm not sure if that would have been in one of our in-prison CC3s. They really aren't part of the release process, so I'm not sure if that was the case. But again, we are having phone calls every day with multiple groups to get this information out there. And we know that it is starting to happen because we see the numbers are starting to tick up. So we're trying to get the information out there as fast as we can.
Awesome. Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question? If the CC3s and CC2s and CC1s on the yard that are actually the ones in conversations with the men and women who are incarcerated and getting out are not in charge of the release, who's the person that is actually having conversations with the folks that are incarcerated and just told, guess what, you're going home? And these are the housing opportunities, or we're going to list you as transient. Who's the person that actually interacts with those that are incarcerated?
I think we may be talking about two different things here. One of them is if it's COVID related, it begins with healthcare staff actually providing them the notice that they in fact will need quarantine, and then that starts a process where they're handed off to some of their folks, perhaps parole agents if they're going to do housing in Operation Hope. If it's generalized housing as part of the release process, that's a bit different. And I suspect that maybe some of this is related to that in the midst of all the efforts that CDCR is taking with regard to housing related to COVID, that we still have this existing piece of, well, no, folks that just generally need housing. Maybe that's part of what Ms. McDaniels is speaking of, especially if they're taking the public transportation. We'll definitely go back, and we do appreciate all of our partners stepping in when they see there's a gap, like you have, Ms. McDaniels, and we do appreciate you making those referrals. Please don't discontinue doing that, and feel free to email me or anyone in my department if you feel like you're not getting a response. But specifically, if they're going to parole, there will be a parole staff member that sits down with them to go over their parole plans. If they're going to probation, that can vary depending on to which county.
Guillermo, do the parole staff that sit down with them the parole plans, is that in the institution, or is that the day they get out or the day after they get out?
That's before.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So would that be their counselor usually?
No, so I think that's why we get, it gets complicated because over the last few months, we've had to use different staff to do pre-parole depending on the institution, and we need assistance. And in some instances, DRP staff has stepped in and actually assisted where we have shortages. So it could be that part of that pre-parole process includes parole staff from time to time, DRP staff, and if they're requesting something like interstate transfer, that would be their correctional counselor. Wish it was simpler.
It's a huge job, heavy lift. Lee, any communications from the probation side of the house we might want to discuss at this juncture, or do you know how the body's doing across the state? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Mute is usually a better mode for me in life, so I'm just it's a challenge. I think, I appreciate Guillermo's comments. I don't think that there's anyone in the state who wouldn't describe this as a very significant challenge. There's not enough housing. That's true for locals. That's true for the state. Building out the supportive networks is the single biggest and most important thing that we want to be doing in probation. And there's not enough out there right now. There's probably not enough money out there, but we just have to keep doing everything we can and finding it. It's a challenge. I'll leave it at that.
Hi. Would I be able to chime in just to kind of give some oversight as well as to what the problem might be, and hopefully as our partners start to become aware of this, of the services that we're able to provide, I think that the need will be communicated within the institution. So currently we work closely, DRP works closely with the community transition program to assist with the pre-parole planning. So normally we provide just substance use disorder treatment. So prior to this emergency housing being available, the individuals that might have had communicated a need for housing weren't offered housing through our contract because we hadn't opened it up to those that weren't in need of substance use disorder treatment services. Now that we're opening it up and we're communicating it to CTP within the institutions through our community-based organizations, I believe that we'll be able to close that gap and relieve those transportation needs from those individuals that are releasing tomorrow. But I do want to say thank you to all of our community-based organizations, to Place for Grace, for all the transportation that's being coordinated through our CBOs to assist with this. We're greatly appreciative of what your efforts are to assist us.
Appreciate that, Jessica. Thanks for chiming in. Anybody else on the board? Understanding this rolled out fast and it's complicated and hard in large organizations to get that, close to the ground interface that really is effective and working. I appreciate everybody's efforts. It's a big deal. Also, as we close now, the public comment section. Yes.
Oh, I just had another comment on one of the public comments. I don't know if this is the time.
It is the time.
Okay. The last few months we've hear from the community in particular about Riverside and about the inspections. And I know we have a little bit of movement on the inspections, but I just wanted to again extend my participation in the inspections, and I would be happy to go with the field instructors. And I sent an email about it, but it would be amazing to have a little bit of movement on that. And I just wanted to remind folks that I'm willing to go in. So thanks for that.
Thank you. And you actually primed the pump for something that I was going to say, and I think it bears sort of a consideration right now. We always during these meetings hear a great deal of public comment, and I want to say that I think all the BSCC staff, board members, take copious notes about what's said, what's considered by advocates or public comment people during that time, and it does not fall on deaf ears. We don't do an exchange during a meeting. It would make it hopelessly too long, and we cannot do that. But please know that we consider and we critique ourselves and we debrief on these meetings, and much of that has to do with the public comments section. Norma, as to your point about you being available, we've also had conversations about that. You're on board, and we'll get you all the PPE you need as soon as we get something going in that direction. With all of that said, thank and excuse, if you want to leave, Jessica and Kevin, although if you want to stay, we'd love to have you. We're going to continue down the road on this meeting and move to the discussion items in our agenda. So thanks to both of you, super helpful today. Don't lose our number. I think we'll be having you back for further reporting out on this issue, and I appreciate all your work. We actually, Kevin and Jessica, spent so much time with the BSCC this week, they thought they were employed by us, Guillermo, so I just want you to know they were willing and ready to participate. Now, I think we're at the point in the agenda where we want to approve the minutes of the meeting. If I have that correct, yes. Adam, am I correct?
Yes, you are.
That item, we want to look at the minutes from the meeting on June 11th and July 16th, and we are asking for comment and requesting approval of this item? Seeing no comments.
Move approval, Sheriff Gore.
Thank you. Second?
Groudon.
Okay. Good job, Groudon. Quick. You'd be great on Jeopardy. That was excellent. And now we'll do a roll call, Adam.
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Mr. Groudon,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Seal,
Aye.
Mr. Ortola,
Aye.
Mr. Bronco,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick,
Aye.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you all very much. On to the discussion items. Item B, standards for training and corrections, the carotid hold specifically, training certification prohibition. I'm looking at Yvonne, who just popped up. Oh, this is such an efficient. Now, I really like being able to see all of us on the board. That was the issue we had last time. We had people all over the map. So, and Yvonne actually snuck in. Would you like to present?
I would.
Take it away.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting. This is Gordon. There were two minutes that were on for approval. Did we approve both of them with the last?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you have a, we'll let you.
I'm through talking. You answered my question.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Yvonne Garner, Deputy Director of the SCC program. This agenda item requests your approval of a policy change that would prohibit the STC certification of carotid hold training. This approval would also permanently revoke the carotid hold training certifications that were suspended effective June 10th of this year. As way of background, SCC is responsible for setting standards for the selection and training of correctional staff and probation officers, and this includes the statewide training certification program. In the wake of the death of George Floyd and the resulting nationwide outrage, Governor Newsom announced new policing and criminal justice reforms on June 5th that included an order that the carotid hold be removed from state police training programs and state training materials. In compliance with that order, BSCC issued a memo to the field on June 10th, immediately ending the certification of 72 courses that included some type of carotid control hold training. The memo also prohibited the delivery of carotid hold training under an STC certification. This action was taken in alignment with similar steps taken by POST, which is the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, who sets selection training standards for law enforcement officers. At this time, the prohibition is focused on training and within existing authority, but there are efforts underway to change the law to ban the use of the carotid hold entirely. The governor committed to working with the legislature on a statewide ban of the carotid hold that would apply to all police forces across the state. AB 1196 passed in the Senate Public Safety Committee last week and is now in the Appropriations Committee. In addition, a ban on the use of the hold in local correctional facilities will be considered as part of BSCC's regulation revision cycle that is currently in process, as Katie mentioned earlier this morning. And we will keep you posted as these changes to law and regulations develop and bring forward any additional related actions. So at this time, I'd like to request that the board permanently revoke the carotid hold training certifications that have already been suspended, prohibit the future certification of any course that includes carotid hold training, and adopt conforming policy in the SCC program manuals to ensure that carotid hold training will no longer be certified. So at this time, I'd like to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the board? And I'm on an odd screen. Yvonne's large and I can't see other board members, so I don't know how to fix that.
If you go up to the top right-hand corner, there should be a little icon that says gallery view. If you tap that, it should change your view back.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody on the board wish to comment on this item? Andy?
we banned the carotid restraint here shortly after the George Floyd incident, and would support the movement by the BSCC board. But I just want to make it very clear that what happened to George Floyd was not a carotid restraint. It was an act of wanton violence. And we are removing a tool that could be used safely if there was adequate training. However, it's very difficult to keep up with, and the risk outweighs the usefulness of that tool. So I would make a motion to support the BSCC banning the carotid restraint training and certification.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And we'll hold just a moment now before we take a vote and ask for public comment on this issue.
We do not have any public comment on this item.
Thank you, Adam. We have a motion and a second. Adam, will you take roll?
Chair Penner?
Aye.
Mr. Verarosa?
Aye.
Mr. Gradden?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Seal?
Aye.
Mr. Urtola?
Aye.
Mr. Barranco?
Aye.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Budnick?
Aye.
Steinhardt?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Kumpion?
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on now to item C, the Adult Reentry Grant Program Rental Assistance Funding Recommendations.
And before we begin, Madam Chair, I did want to clarify, there might have been some confusion about some of the attachments that were part of the agenda item. There was adult reentry grant funding that was already awarded last year, and some of those recipients included some of our board members that participate on those boards, I think including Sheriff Gore San Diego, CYO for Mr. Barranco, and the adult recidivism, ARC. Those awards were already made. And so there's a very finite list in the board agenda item of the next slate of awards that are going to be awarded, and I'm not sure there's any conflicts in that particular list. So just to clarify, Sheriff Gore, I don't think you need to recuse yourself from this item, and likewise, Ms. Kumpion and Mr. Budnick, I don't think you have to recuse yourselves on this item.
Yeah, thank you. I misunderstood.
Okay. And if any of you who are looking at the very short list of awards and see any conflict, I'll give you just a minute to do that.
Chair Pender, I have something to say about that, the remaining list.
Okay.
In the course of my work as a judge, I have had contact with one of those agencies that is in the list that we are going to vote on today. They've been referrals that I have made to that agency. I'm not a member of that board. I do know the founder of that particular organization. I discussed this briefly with Mr. McGuire yesterday, or perhaps maybe a couple of days ago. We both, I think, were of the opinion that I did not necessarily have to recuse myself, but perhaps take a position that I would not participate in this discussion and then would abstain during the voting. That sounds pretty complicated, but I bring that up to you. I am perfectly comfortable with doing whatever you think is necessary. If recusal is necessary, that's fine. I just am not a member of that board, but I certainly am willing to do whatever. I don't want to be a barrier to us taking care of this business.
Aaron, I mean, we should all watch him closely as he shudders because he's worried I'm going to give a legal opinion. I don't think you asked me for a legal opinion. I think what you asked me is if I saw it as an issue. I do not. I think in the course of all of our work days, we come across many of the programs or are familiar with things in our community. And if we had to recuse ourselves for each of those, none of us would vote many times. So I think I'm super comfortable with you participating.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Aaron, that was not a legal opinion, and I thought your poker face was excellent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anytime. All right. We're back to the item itself. That would be the adult reentry program. Oh, there you are. Hello. I just made you a member of the board, Tanya. I don't see. Welcome and happy to have you, and take it away.
Thank you. I do need access to share. I have a PowerPoint that I'll bring up.
Yes, one second.
Okay. Can you all see my?
I think we do. We have it.
Perfect. Well, good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Tanya Hill, and I'm a field representative in the Corrections Planning and Grants Programs Division of the BSCC. I am before you today to present Agenda Item C. This agenda item requests approval of 8 additional rental assistance awards as recommended last year by the Executive Steering Committee of the Adult Reentry Grant Program. In an effort to expedite the release of funds to help with early state prison releases due to COVID-19, this item requests the board consider awarding grantees on the ranked list from the previous round of ARG recipients. In September of this year, staff will return to the board to establish a timeline for consideration of the warm handoff portion of the grant. So I do have a short PowerPoint that will provide a basic overview of the Adult Reentry Grant Program and parameters of the request for expedited funding of the additional rental assistance awards. The Adult Reentry Grant was established in the Budget Act of 2018 with $50 million in funding to community-based organizations to support people coming out of state prison. Per the 2018 Budget Act, funding was divided into 3 categories: $25 million for rental assistance, $9.3 million for warm handoff, and $15 million for rehabilitation of existing property or buildings for housing offenders released from prison. The Budget Act of 2019 provided an additional $32.9 million to be split between rental assistance and warm handoff, and increased the available funds as follows. Rental assistance increased to $40,651,250, and warm handoff increased to $25,001,250. At the July 2018 board meeting, Chair Penner and then board member Francine Tornor, apologize if I didn't say that right, were appointed as co-chairs of the Executive Steering Committee, and you can reference that full list in Attachment C. I seem to be missing this, but that's okay. Last year, the Executive Steering Committee read and rated a total of 147 proposals, which included 58 proposals for the rental assistance program and 89 proposals for the warm handoff program. And you can find the list of all the applicants in Attachment C5. On July 11th, 2019, a total of 69 awards were approved by the board for these 2 components, with 16 awards to rental assistance applicants and 53 awards to warm handoff applicants. And these can be found in Attachment C6. Additionally, in February of 2020, a single award was approved by the board for the rehabilitation of existing property or buildings. The Executive Steering Committee placed a priority on services that provide critical time intervention to meet the immediate needs of individuals upon their release from prison or from residential treatment if placed there by parole. Some examples of the eligible activities and services that could be provided are noted here, and they included but are not limited to short-term emergency housing assistance, landlord incentives, permanent supportive housing, rent subsidies, transitional housing, stipends to families willing to house the target population, vouchers, move-in costs, and credit repair. Those were the particular services that were deemed as eligible for rental assistance. And since that's the piece we're focusing on here, those are the ones that I will discuss or that I was sharing with you. So moving on to the current Budget Act. So the Budget Act of 2020 appropriated additional funding for the Adult Reentry Grant Program in the amount of $37 million to be divided equally between rental assistance and warm handoff programs and allocated as follows: 17.575 for rental assistance and 17.575 for warm handoff services, and 1.8 million to the BSCC for costs to administer the grant. Due to recent increases in the number of individuals released from state prisons because of the COVID-19 crisis, increasing the urgency for community-based organizations to respond quickly to the growing needs of the reentry population, housing resources are imperative. To help expedite the issuance of funds to the field, staff recommends that the existing list of ranked ordered proposals as developed by the Executive Steering Committee for the Adult Reentry Grant Rental Assistance component be used to award the funding allocated in the fiscal year 2020 Budget Act for this purpose. A total of 42 rental assistance proposals remain unfunded from the initial ranked order list developed in 2019 by the Executive Steering Committee, which would easily allow for approximately 8 of the next highest ranked proposals to be awarded swiftly and resources implemented quickly. Project summaries for these rental assistance projects are included as attachment C9, and the proposed or the recommended agencies are listed on your screen. As noted previously, we will come back to the board in September of this year to launch a new process for the warm handoff program. Unlike the rental assistance applicants, there are not a sufficient number of qualified applicants in the warm handoff category to allocate the fiscal year 2020 funding at this time. Given the importance of accelerating the rental assistance component, staff recommends that we go down the list from last year to fund an additional 8 rental assistance programs immediately. In summary, staff recommends that the board fund the ranked order list of proposals, numbers 16 through 22 in the table below, or the table on the screen, offer a partial award to Time for Change Foundation number 23, which falls at the funding cutoff point as listed in the table. Authorize staff to continue to make awards from the proposal ranked order list if any applicant is unable to accept the award or relinquishes an award, first by offering to any partial awardees, and authorize staff to continue to make awards as noted above if staff determine during the follow-up award making process that an applicant recommended for an award is ineligible, or if a grantee becomes ineligible during the grant cycle. This concludes my presentation, and I am happy to take any questions that you may have. Linda, if you're talking, you're on mute.
And Tanya, will you go ahead and take off the screen share?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right, any questions or comments from board members? That simply means you killed it, Tanya. Very good. Any questions or comments from the public on this item?
Chair Penner, we have one comment that it's Avalon Edwards.
Okay.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to be reading a comment on behalf of my colleague Jordana Wong-Omshihi, if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay. My name is Jordana Wong-Omshihi, Policy Associate for Starting Over Inc. in Riverside County. We are currently supporting someone that has recently been released from jail. This person is 57 years old with no priors and was admitted with bail set at 0. Unfortunately, due to the lack of social distancing, quarantining, and COVID testing and PPE inside, they tested positive for COVID-19 upon release and was hospitalized within days of release for high fever and struggling to breathe. They were never COVID tested in the jail, nor upon release by jail staff. Neither were they provided soap at any point. They now worry about the long-term effects of COVID on their lungs and everyone left inside to experience the conditions they describe as dangerous and chaotic. Like so many of the positive cases as a result of conditions inside local jails, this was preventable. The BSCC provides leadership through the establishment of guidelines for local facilities, and currently there's no cohesive response around prevention of COVID-19 and the protection of people inside jails. Starting Over Inc. is recommending the BSCC update their guidelines and best practices to further ensure the safety of everyone currently within local jails, to include quarantining between transfers and upon entry, increased accessibility of COVID testing for people inside, specifically testing prior to release, requirements of PPE for staff, and limiting new admissions. Thank you.
There are no other comments. Chair Penner, you're muted.
Sorry. Looking for a motion in a second.
Don't move,
I'll make a
Sheriff.
motion. Mike Rotolo.
All right. Second.
Second, Sheriff Gore.
Thank you. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Mr. Villarosa,
Aye.
Mr. Gradden,
Sorry, aye.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Seal,
Aye.
Mr. Urtola,
Aye.
Mr. Barranco,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick. Is he still with us?
No, I apologize. He had to leave. He did text me.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Aye.
Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. And this takes us to the end of our meeting. And at this juncture, we would invite any public comments for any item that you wish to discuss at this point. And once again, that's limited to 2 minutes. Adam, or is there anyone in the queue?
I have one right now. It's Tara Lawyer.
Okay. Tara?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Lawyer from Impact Justice based out of Oakland, California. I'm the program manager for the Homecoming Project, which is a community-based transitional housing program. I am representing one of the applicants through the BSCC Adult Reentry Program grant that Tanya just highlighted, and you guys moved to continue expediting the next in line candidates through the ranking program. And I thank you for that, because we do need the services, we need the resources to continue these housings and services for individuals that are most vulnerable coming home during this time. I also want to just make sure that the services that we will be providing will be COVID-19 response related. And if there will be some modifications on the back end to make sure that we can provide those services moving forward.
Thank you. Any others, Adam?
That is all.
Thank you. At this point, hearing nothing else from the board, I see no hands raised, nothing. Our next meeting will be September 10th, 2020. Thank you all for your participation. Thanks to those who were participating as members of the public remotely. And at this juncture, I will adjourn the meeting. See you all soon.